Hey now, cats, we're back again this week on the Balls from Ellwood show. And with me today, I have Alex Stern, the lead singer of one of my favorite bands, The Pomps. And we're going to talk a lot about him today. We're going to talk about their new album coming out, Total Eclipse of the Pomps. But first off, I actually wanted to ask you, let's start off talking about how you started out. You said you're from Boston, right? Did you grow up from Boston? Did you grow up in Boston? Are you currently from Boston?
Yeah, I'm sort of a born and raised Boston area guy.
How's the ska scene in Boston? I mean, I grew up with the Boss Tones and bands like that. I mean, was it always kind of a was it? Did you always have a strong ska community growing up?
Certainly at the time that I was growing up and getting into music, we did. We had obviously the Bosstones were the national standard bearer, but a thing that a lot of people don't know is the Scatolites were sort of semi-based out of Boston. And so Lloyd, their drummer, lived in Hull, Massachusetts.
Oh
And so
wow.
there was and Ken, who played keyboard with them. So there was always a big traditional ska scene happening in the bars that I was a little too young to go to, but then those bands would play all ages shows. Yeah, I mean, I was just straight up spoiled. There was a lot of really good shows. There was a lot of matinees. I also like by the time I could go to shows, I didn't live like a half hour from the city. I lived like in pretty much in Boston, like
Wow.
and I was lucky that that's where my parents decided to end up as well. So yeah, it was a lot of opportunity to see music.
Well, that actually leads me to my next question. You brought up your parents. What kind of kid were you growing up? Did you always have a passion for music, and was your family and your parents supportive of that?
Yeah, I'd say so. Like they're not musical people in terms of playing instruments, but they like music. And they knew that I liked music very young, and they let me get into it for sure. There was a piano in the house when I was pretty young. They definitely got me a CD player when it was still relatively bleeding edge technology. So yeah, in terms of playing, look, nobody wants to hear that their kid wants to be a rock star. It's not because it's not a realistic thing, but I think, in terms of letting me figure it out and figure out what is possible and not possible, yeah, they're totally fine.
Did they ever give you like being a rock star is all great, but you might want to have this as a backup. Did they ever give you like any suggestions for like what to do, if that didn't pan out?
I can't think of anything specifically. They own their own store and didn't take like a traditional path to anything, so they kind of know what they can and can't say.
Hmm. When did you realize that you had that there was the defining moment that music was going to be more than a hobby for you and like become a way of life? Did you have like that, that defining moment in your life?
Oh, I think when I was like 5 years old, I think like pretty
Oh wow, it was
early.
really that early. Hmm.
Well, yeah, because I used to go over a friend's house and there would be this very, very low quality 45s that you could buy at, what the big box stores were in the 80s. Like up here, it was called Caldor and Braintree. And yeah, there would be like Billy Joel 45s or Billy Idol's Moni Moni was a huge one.
Hmm.
Elton John's like most cocaine fueled stuff came out and I really liked it.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, and I mean, I didn't know about independent music. No kid that age could. You just like the radio was still the monoculture. But yeah, I think I knew that guitars were awesome. I got my first guitar when I was about 9. So yeah, I think I know, like you don't really understand what that is at that age, but I I was always into it for sure.
Well, let me ask you. It sounds like you had some pretty great taste in music growing up, but I wanted to ask you, how did you in fact discover ska? Hmm.
I think it was at a summer camp. I'm pretty sure. It was a camp in Wellesley, Massachusetts. And it basically I don't want to say I got sent there, but my parents like I was being punished for something and they sent me to this camp that was like more of like a school type camp, but it turned out to not be a school at all and it was super fun and we started bands and we got to sleep there like in a dorm room, and somebody had the Op Ivy CD, somebody had I
Oh,
didn't know what somebody had the Boss Tone, somebody had the sort of pre-down 311, like whatever the second record was, and then even like some real punk, like the Germs made it into me. into my brain at that time, not just mainstream stuff. So yeah, it was that would have been 94, could be a little earlier, could be a little later. It was the same time that like Stone Temple Pilots were the biggest band in the world, which I also liked. I wasn't above that either. I kind of liked all music back then because you don't know that you're supposed to discern.
Let me ask you this. What song or band changed how you heard music after you heard them? Like it was so groundbreaking, monumental to you, you've never heard music the same after. Is there anything that stands out in your mind?
Oh, well, that's really tough. Like, cause remembering, here's one. George Harrison's "Got My Mind Set on You."
Oh, dude,
For
I
whatever
still think that's a great video to this day. I love
for
that song.
for for whatever reason, I remember that resonating. In terms of like, um, and I think that was produced by Jeff Lynne, and all those sounds. He also did "Full Moon Fever" by Tom Petty, and like a lot of
Oh,
that stuff has
sounds
been
great.
sort of that stuff's been a real backbone for like what I like sonically. So I would say that, I mean, I think later, like I remember buying my first Boss Tones record,
Same.
and that being a big deal. I remember being older than that and hearing, not more subversive music, but stuff that's a little less mainstream, like hearing Elvis Costello for the first time,
Oh, dude, I'm
Ecstasy
a
for the
big
first
Elvis
time.
fan. Oh,
Yeah, but that stuff was less. I was less of a kid by that point. I was just more getting steered into better stuff. But yeah, I would say that George Harrison song's a pretty big one. Well, and the biggest one for me, I can't believe it, is the Johnny B. Good scene in Back to the Future is what made me like that really. And a lot of people would say I looked like Michael J. Fox, and a lot of people in kindergarten would call me Alex P. Keaton, which was his character on Family Ties. So I would say that that was also that little snippet, that little guitar solo. That was the first thing I wanted to learn at a guitar lesson. So that was pretty big too.
that's pretty awesome, man. I mean, I always wondered if, like, when you watch that movie, I always wonder if maybe that scene ever would inspire anybody. That's really cool that it happened, you know?
Oh yeah, I mean that and the George Harrison thing are like very very high up.
I feel like that song has like one of the catchiest hooks in like music history. Like, I don't even think about it in like, I'll just out of like, every couple months, it just kind of like, you get an earworm and it just pops in your head. So like that tells me that's like some of the best written music in history, you know?
Absolutely.
And I feel like you guys are a lot of the same, have a lot of the same qualities. Because, like, I mean, I have to say, dude, I kind of got, self-admittedly, I'm kind of ashamed. I got on the Pomps train pretty late. Like when you guys signed with Bad Time, and I ran out and got this amazing banger of an album. I instantly fell in love with you. I instantly went back and started checking out all your older stuff. And man, I really, really love you guys. And that's why I wanted to talk to you so much. And I couldn't be more excited for the new album. The two singles you put out already, I think, are amazing. But I wanted to ask you, how did you end up with the name The Pomps? And like, how can you tell me a little bit about how the band got together?
Sure. Well, in terms of naming a band, like I think everybody knows that moment where you're like, we got a show, we need a name, and that was one of those things where it's just like, well, start looking at Trojan box sets, start looking at every CD or piece of media in the room, and you find a name for this band. And there was Toots and Maytals, Pomps and Pride. And a lot of that is because I think originally we were starting as a more explicitly ska band, and or rock steady influence thing. And so that really fit it. It still fits it now, but that's not, you wouldn't think to go directly to Jamaican music to name our band at this time. In terms of how we got together, we were in a new wave band together, me, Casey, and the drummer Zach. And that band had a tour planned, and it just then one day we basically got a call that the band was over from other people in the band.
Oh, wow.
And so, and I don't want to say that we took it like super hard, but it was just like I was just like, well, we still have this rehearsal space, and so maybe we get together in there at some point. And so the very first rehearsal for the band is actually the lineup that is the band now, which most bands can't say. But for a while, Zach decided not to do it at first, our drummer, and so my friend Rick played drums for about the first 6 years of the band. And yeah, I mean, it was really meant to be a very two tone, like pretty, not that original a concept, to be honest. It's just that my songwriting was so weird that people thought I had this like crazy take on it. But I was initially trying to be like wicked generic.
Hmm.
And it just did, yeah.
Yeah,
And now
it doesn't come
now
off
I
like
can,
that.
no, and now I can see like, I mean, now I don't even try to do that, but it was like, yeah, I want to do a band that kind of sounds like the Specials. Like that was my initial inkling. Because remember, this was 2011. There weren't a lot of new bands starting. This was like we actually were received really well initially because people like forgot that they hated ska. You know what I mean? It was like it was so out of the culture at the time that we could kind of just do our thing. So yeah, that's how we got together initially. And then we made a bunch of EPs, and then I joined Big D, and so I got pretty busy with that. Our bass player was in Have Nots, which was pretty busy. And so we just kind of came back to it once in a while. Then I had a child, and that kind of put the band on hold. And then COVID put the band on hold. And then, so at the end of that, no, it wasn't totally the end of COVID, but I was just like, well, it's dumb that this band doesn't have a full length album. We're probably not going to last much longer. Let's go ahead and do one. And it just happened to work out. And, you know, actually make the train run faster. So we're very lucky. You know, we're not really supposed to exist right now.
Really? I mean, I remember I had before Catbite got really big. My buddy Tim, I remember he used to tell me about you guys back before they even blew up, and that kind of got me curious into checking you guys out too. And but I wanted to ask you, is there anything that you won't write a song about?
Oh, I try not to write about people directly in my life. And if I did, it would only ever be positive. Like, I'm not going to write a song about my bandmates. I'm not saying I never have done that before, but like I certainly wouldn't now. I would never write about anybody in my family in a negative way.
Hmm.
And yeah, I would try. You notice, especially on this new record, it's incredibly depersonalized. It is it is about society. It has some of my experience with it, I'm trying to get away from. I don't want to put any individuals on the spot.
Well, that's what I wanted to ask you. Do you have a routine when you sit down to write music? Can you describe your process a little? And I mean, where do ideas come from songs? I mean, you said you don't like to personalize things too much. Is there I mean, does that just come from like you see like a news article or something and something inspires you? I mean, where does
Well,
it come
you
from?
know, it's funny. They do come from like personal experiences, and then how I think about them in the broader context. Like, one of the biggest things is I live in Boston, Massachusetts, which I don't know if many people know this, is arguably the most expensive city in the country. San
Oh, I didn't
Francisco
know
and New
that.
York, but it's extremely expensive. And so everybody I know, even people who are doing fairly well financially, they're just affected by it every day. And so I'm constantly interacting with that reality and how everybody's doing their own sort of improvisation to get around it. And so a lot of the Pomp songs, especially recently, are about that. You know, about like basically how we live in a golden age of real estate fraud. That's a huge theme within, and I think that's like very unconventional for songwriting. I don't think a lot of people are using that as their main place to hang their hat, but that's it's very important to me that that somehow in this life we solve this because like we're all getting screwed. And so that's a huge part of it. But in terms of like the process, usually what will happen is I'll just feel like playing my guitar, and if something sounds cool, then I'll start recording that. And from there, if I start singing something over that and that sounds cool, I'll do that. I'm pretty lucky. You were remarking how I have like more of a professional sounding podcast rig before we
Yes.
started recording. Um, I'm very good with the like cut and paste functions and music production software. So like I'm the kind of guy like I can have an idea for a lyric, and if only one of the words works and it only works in the middle of the line, but I sang it at the beginning, I can just move it. Like I can work extremely fast with my demo system. So I sometimes I play something all the way through first time, but sometimes like sometimes I can just smash things together really, really quickly. So there's no one way that I do it, but in terms of making demos, I'm like kind of particularly skilled. Not in terms of like I can't record your band's album, but I can record my demos very, very well.
Let me ask you this. Whenever I talk to musicians, one of my favorite things I like to ask them is, and I always like hearing their take because I've heard so many people say one way or the other. A lot of people say when they write songs, they don't ever feel complete to you. And then I've talked to people that say, yeah, they do. I mean, where do you fall on that? Do you ever feel like when you write a song, it's complete?
Well, the songs usually feel complete. The arrangements do not always feel complete. Like for instance, like we recorded this new record, Partial Eclipse of the Pomps, last April, and we did it very quickly. Um, And so every once in a while, because I've had a lot of time to marinate with it, I'll think of like a cool call and response backing vocal idea. But I don't really think of ways that I could change the fundamentals of the song. Like if I was playing it on an acoustic guitar for you in a coffee shop, it would sound roughly the same last April as it does now.
Well, that's pretty interesting, man. I gotta say, I'm waiting for you guys to come to Pittsburgh or somewhere close. I was supposed to see you. We were gonna go see my buddy Duck. Yeah, he's in the band Joystick, and they were playing DC with a bunch of bad time bands, and you guys just so happened to not be on that leg of the tour. And I was like, oh man, but one of these days I'm gonna get you to Pittsburgh.
We're pretty elusive. I do know there is a good DIY promoter in Pittsburgh, and so we do want to do it.
Are you talking about my buddy Derek Reed by chance?
I know him, and he would be totally fine too. I was thinking about somebody else, but he's there's an embarrassment of riches there.
Well, let me ask you this. You brought up the new album. I want to talk about this new album because the first two singles I heard are amazing and I absolutely love it. I got mine pre-ordered. I can't wait to get it in the mail. I love the videos. I wanted to bring that up because I love Devin K and I'm actually going to see him this weekend. And I just love the video for that. That's Not a House. And how did Devin K end up in that video? Like, how did that come to be? Are you good friends with him?
Well, we did a tour with him last. I don't know. It was like right after we made the album, and he first of all, yeah, I mean, we got along with their whole band very well. We had some mutual friends that were not from the music scene, even so. It was,
Oh, that's cool.
yeah, but we got along really well. And I noticed that he was always making this sort of weird green screen stuff, and I I could not come up with ideas for videos. All I had was like, "We'll perform," and I was like, maybe this guy could do something weird. Um, and luckily we had a lot of time to plan it and like miss each other and not email each other back. And finally we got it, and he had this idea for the game show, and he was able to just give us a list of shots that my friend Craig, who made the World Full of Traps video, we just did those both in the same day. We did
Oh,
all the
wow.
shots for Devin, and then we did all the shots for that video. Yeah, and they're both like, I don't know if bands are honest with you, but most bands hate making music videos.
Oh, see,
It's
yeah, a lot of people don't tell me that. I mean, it's good to have that
it's
inside scoop.
I mean, well,
Why? Why is that such a taboo
well,
thing
I mean,
with
also like as
artists?
like an early, it's just like an early 40s dude. Like when you look at the camera, it's not showing you the 18-year-old best version of you, so it's
Oh,
looking
dude,
at
I get that. Every time I look in
um
the mirror, I feel like my
and
brain is still back, in the 18-year-old, and then yeah, the body is the 48-year-old.
so that's a
Impressive.
huge part of it, but it's also like it's hard to not feel cheesy. But I think I feel like we struck the balance this time. I feel like both of them, and actually the videos for the last record are quite good too.
Oh yeah, I
The heart
watched them a lot actually.
the heart flipper is more of my like. For the second one, we sort of made a mini movie, and our drummer had a child that week, and so we were not gonna be able to do a full band thing. And I was like, well, we can't do one with we'll do the lead singer thing where I just go do it. Um, and it's cool. It's something very different. It was incredibly expensive, um, and yeah, that one didn't feel as much as like that felt like two separate projects coming together, the filmmakers and the band, whereas like the heart flipper video was a lot of fun to make. It was with my friend Roger, and that was another green screen thing. So I just think we've learned that like we're a band that does just well hanging out for a day in front of a green screen.
Oh, I wanted to ask you, how long does it generally take to make a music video like that?
So the heart flipper one was about, well, it's easy for me because it's about I would say it's 3 to 4 hours of shooting per
Hmm.
song, and then it's about however crazy your editing guy or director wants to get. Um, so I don't want to say it only takes 5 hours when like somebody else will be like, dude, I worked for 25 hours on that. But um, I would say like I think it would. I think everybody would go like, yeah, like for the budgets that we're working with, like maybe about 18 hours total. It's going to be more for some, less for some, but yeah, it it takes real time, and then of course there's the planning, and there's wrangling everybody, getting the scheduling. But yeah, these were a lot more fun. I felt very good about where these ended up. It kind of there's not a third one for the record. I kind of feel bad about that now, but I didn't know that it was going to be like so rewarding this time.
Can you tell me a little bit about how you ended up on Bad Time Records?
It was your friend Tim
Was it
that
really?
you mentioned earlier. Yeah, yeah. I posted something uh, like the cover of Top of the Pomps being like, yeah, this is a record that didn't do very well, but we're gonna make the sequel to it finally. And he was like, have you talked to Mike? And I was like, no, but I'm open to it. And that's kind of yeah, that's kind of where I had met Mike before via Big D, but
He's such a great guy. Mm.
yeah, he is, and it's also like I don't really pitch people, which I should be doing more often, but like I I don't like asking things of people with this band because I want everybody to sort of come to it on their own, and that has been happening. It's really slow. I'm gonna die before enough people come to it, but um, but I've been trying really hard to like not be in everybody's business with it because I know a lot of people now, and I could probably I could scramble to get us on the road a lot more, but I you always want to be in a position where people are asking you and not the opposite.
Well, I'll be honest with you, man. I don't get a ton of views, but the whole reason I started doing this show is to try to like spread the word of things that we love and are passionate about, whether because like I'm a big horror movie fan, so I talk to a lot of people like from horror flicks and stuff, but I'm a humongous ska and punk fan, and even if I turn on one person, I feel like it's a success to like people that I love, and I definitely feel like you guys are, you definitely need some more love, so I'm really hoping, this I'm trying my best to spread the word to get people to check you out too, because my wife and I think you're amazing. So,
Oh, well, thank you.
but let me ask you, how's your musical influence changed from you were growing up as opposed to now? Is it still the same, or would you feel it changed at all?
Well, I mean, lately it's been all about the guitar. So like all of my, even though, uh, I'm not gonna try to do like an Alan Holdsworth style solo in a pop song. That's what I'm listening to. Um, Listening to a lot of 80s hard rock too, which does I
Nice.
think permeate this album very slightly.
I get
Um,
that from the
eh,
singles. I got that a little bit.
yeah, yeah.
That's not a
So
bad thing, though.
no, no, no. It's as somebody once described the sound of Van Halen as a dog wearing sunglasses, and I just love. I'm like, yeah, man, we need a little more dog wearing sunglasses in this. And I think a lot of people would be horrified by that. I think a lot of people think that's the worst music ever made, but I don't think that. And
Oh man,
so
I'm a child of the '80s, so like I totally appreciate all that stuff.
yeah, and I mean, I like all the proper, like skinny tie bullshit too. Like obviously, I'm a huge, New Order, um, XTC, Smiths, like obviously that stuff's a huge part of me as well. But I just wanted to make something that was a little less, you know, 80s and more. It's still new wave, it's still power pop, but it's a little less like, you know, flashing neon sign with the decade.
See, I think that's why I connect with you guys so much too, because you blend ska and reggae well, but you also bring like all these little subtle nuances from all these other genres of music together. Like you're kind of like a big collaboration of everything great. So I mean,
Well,
is that thought of when you're writing, or is that just kind of come like organically?
it's just I think there's what makes us different is one, we're not just a straight up revivalist traditional ska band. I play in some of those and I love those. But also like I think we're one of the few bands that just doesn't have any pop punk influence. Just because like we grew up like or at least I did sort of around the donut hole period that pop punk existed. Like pop punk in the US really took off in like 98 to
Yep.
2004. And that's like just a time where I wasn't consuming that much new music. And so I think we don't have any of those, um, we just don't have any of those tropes. So any of the ska punk that we're doing doesn't, it's as if like Blink 182 and Less Than Jake didn't exist, you know? It's so it's a little it exists in kind of a funny influence space.
Do you feel the ska and punk scenes changed over the years, and do you feel like it's been for the better or for the worse?
Oh, it's way better now.
I kind of
Um,
feel that way too. And I've been into the ska scene and punk scene since I was probably early teens. And
yeah, I mean, don't get me wrong. Like, I think life in America was better in the '90s, so my experience going to ska and punk shows in the '90s was better. But I think the scene itself is far better now. It's just everything about it's better.
what's the craziest thing a fan thus far has ever asked you to do?
It involves touching a body part. And I did not and would not. I'm very respectful. um, somebody did lick my guitar at a Big D show in
Oh
Salt Lake City,
God.
and it was not as bad as it sounds, but like, yeah, you can't do
Hmm.
that.
Let me ask you
It-
this. Has your mind ever wandered or have you ever been distracted while you have to play a show? And how do you push through that?
oh, it happens all the time. I mean, you think
Oh,
about,
really?
oh yeah, I mean, it could be like, it could be like, did I catch this episode of this show? You could be thinking, or you could be like, oh man, when I get home, I got to remember to. Yeah, it also really depends. If you're in the middle of a tour and you've been playing shows every day, you might not be thinking about everyday stuff. But if you're plowing into a weekend and you're going to be going back to doing your normal stuff on Monday, yeah, I think, and I'm also like kind of distractible to begin with, but the way you counter that is with good practice, good sleep, drinking water, warming up, and like I don't personally drink alcohol, and so I think that helps me a lot.
Yeah, I gave up drinking, geez, probably a decade ago. It
That's
was
just
probably one of the
just
best
about my
decisions I ever
timeline.
made, man.
You got you got if you're serious about your life, you don't have time for it.
Let me ask you this. Is there any bands, and you don't have to name names, but have you ever had to, perform with bands and you either didn't get along with them or, you just didn't gel with them? And how do you push through that too? I always wonder that.
It's been a long time. y- I find that most of the time people are very cool, and if you have a bad experience, it's because they're having a bad day. I'll give you an example where I will name a name.
Oh,
One of our biggest influences, Dave Wakeling, English Beat. I've played with
oh,
him a lot, and most of the time he's been lovely. But like one time, he yelled at me for no reason, and it's like, uh, and it's fine. It's not. I'm not. I'm not. It's not tea. And I'm not spit. It's just like it's just a thing that he did because he was probably not having a great day.
I mean, did you
Uh,
ever see him in the future and like, talk things out of a basket of fries or just,
I pick up as if he doesn't remember doing it.
oh,
I'm just a guy. It was a long time ago, but like, yeah, that stuff has happened before, and it's not a big deal. And like, I don't like, honestly, for all I know, I was like acting in a way that I deserve to be yelled at too. Like, I'm
I
not.
mean, is that a normal thing for like kind of like musicians? I mean, I mean, does it make you kind of like get, irritable at times or I mean, I really don't, I've never did anything like that, so I really don't understand.
In the post alcohol time, not really. I mean, between me and my bandmates, like sometimes, yeah, like that's just unavoidable. Between me and another band, um, I'd have to see somebody acting like pretty out of line. Um, i- if I'm feeling irritable, I just throw in my headphones and play guitar. So it's not really a big deal to me.
You actually just brought up something, and it made me think of something. I mean, there's a lot of you guys, and I mean, you when you do tour, you're kind of stuck in close proximity with each other all the time, which I think would probably almost be impossible to not get on each other's nerves at some point. How do you, how do you all kind of stay focused and try to keep out of everybody's hair? Is that a hard thing to do?
Uh, in the Pomps, we actually don't really get annoyed with each other. First of all, we don't tour very much, but second of all, everything about this band is a choice. There's no business sense in doing it. So like we do really try to enjoy it. Um, and treat each other as nicely as we possibly can. In Big D, we sometimes get a little annoyed at it, but it's not usually. It's more like it's more trying to work through like a very simple disagreement, and usually we get there. So yeah, I mean, and on tour, I don't necessarily feel that all the time. It's usually about just trying to navigate the next thing that you have to. So, uh, again, if you try to get some sleep, the only time I've had trouble is when you just can't get enough sleep. That can be a problem. But if you get enough sleep and you drink water, and yeah, you try to take care of yourself. Usually you can get out of it without anybody saying anything too hurtful.
Is being in a band ever, create, problems and, relationships with family or friends or any of that? Does it make that difficult, like in any way?
Well, yeah, I mean, I'm a parent, and you got to work out the childcare, but it doesn't really get too tense. I think everybody knows that I'm not trying to go away for anything frivolous. I think I do a pretty good job of giving a heads up on what my schedule is. That's a huge part of it. But yeah, I can't say it never creates any tension. Of course, it's annoying when you just go away and leave some not problems, but you just leave your some of your duties behind. But
I got
it's not like I don't given that like when I'm home I'm so present and I don't drink and like it usually evens out okay.
I got a couple more for you here.
Sure.
What do you enjoy doing in your free time that may surprise people?
I don't know if anything I do surprises people, but I'm a big bike rider. I've been for a long time. Um, I like to read. I don't know if that really surprises anybody. And I'm a vegetarian. I don't know, but I mean, I play so much guitar. Like that's just so my life that I, it's not surprise. It might surprise people just how into that I am. But yeah, that's sort of my thing.
How many hours a day would you say that you hone your skill? I mean, is it
Now I'm at a couple hours a day for sure, two to three. It wasn't always like that. I have a lot of catch up to do. But yeah, I try to take like I try to I try to learn as many riffs or concepts as I can. The other thing is when you get older, you have to take that stuff real slow. Like you can't just like learn five guitar solos in a day. It takes time. Your brain can only process so much, and your fingers can only so. I'll often be spending an hour on a couple measures, and then still sometimes we get on stage, it doesn't go quite right. But at least I'm trying, and like my vocabulary as a musician is definitely the best it's ever been.
I got one more for you. Do you consider technology a detriment or a positive for getting music out there today?
Um, i- in general, I think it's positive because as much as the delivery systems that are available now have flooded the zone with a lot of crap, before we had those delivery mechanisms, there were a lot of unheard voices. It depends what you think the goal of music is. If the goal of music is to get your stuff out to a lot of people and make a lot of money, that's just so hard to do that I don't know if you could really say which system would work better for you. I can tell you, I'm not a huge fan of AI. I'm not saying that it's not going to be useful for some things. I'm not saying I'm never going to touch it. But right now, it does seem what it is doing is it is stealing your inputs to spit out an output that is just worse than what you could do. I mean,
I
everybody
agree.
talks about everybody goes, look at these videos. It's amazing what AI can do, but you can look at it and it's just like a video of a girl walking. And it's like, okay, how many forests did we fry to get that 2 minute clip of a girl walking? It's not nearly where people are saying it is. I'm not saying it never will be. I'm not saying that you can't use AI to assist you or that you're a bad person, but I'm pretty skeptical.
I agree 100%, man. I'm actually kind of against it. I mean, from a filmmaking standpoint and even from like, that kind of thing. I mean, for the only instance I've seen AI beneficial is like when it's tweaking and remastering, things. But even then, I mean, it's a pretty delicate subject for a lot of
if
people.
if if somebody is dead and cannot finish their work, there's a lot of arguments for using whatever technology is at your disposal if you think you can get their vision. Sometimes it's best to just leave it unfinished, though. And then beyond that, I mean, maybe in the medical space, it might be able to. There might be possibilities in the medical space as long as that stuff is vetted and checked by humans.
Hmm.
We'll see. I mean, obviously, you're wearing a trauma hat, so you know your horror movies, and I'm sure there's going to be a lot of horror content based on what's to come in the medic
Even I mean
in the in the AI
that stuff
in the AI
started
medical
already,
space.
and some of it's kind of like I don't know, man. I'm on the fence. So I mean, yeah, I'm a big trauma fan, dude.
Yeah, yeah, no, that's I came up on that stuff.
I actually just went to be in Lloyd's last movie before he retires. I went to Glen Spey, New York. Yeah.
Oh, great. Yeah, I met him once when he did a screening in Massachusetts.
Yeah, he's one of my favorite people in the world. But let me tell you, let me just ask you real quick here. Where can we check? Where can we catch up with the Pomps? Where can we, keep tabs on you guys and when the new album's coming out? And just tell me a little bit about how we could keep in touch with you guys. Mhm.
Well, we've got thepomps.com, which redirects to our Bandcamp, but there is contact info and merch and all that good stuff on there. We're going to be on every regular streaming platform. You can buy the album at Bad Time Records, and you can watch the videos on Bad Time Records YouTube,
I'm
which I
going to be putting
recommend that you
links up
do.
for all that stuff. Hey, I just want to say thank you, Alex. Thank you for chatting with me. Thanks for coming on the show. I want to tell everybody, make sure you go and pre-order that Total Eclipse of the Pomps album. Make sure you
Par-
have
partial, partial, partial eclipse of the pumps.
partial. Oh, geez, oh my gosh, how
A
embarrassing!
bunch of people have messed that up. I means I should have called the album that, but I didn't. So
Partial Eclipse of the Pomps, which that's funny too. I mean, and if you don't have this, you have to go get this and
that's a
make
great
sure
one.
you catch up with the Pomps. They're. Thank you so much, man. You guys are one of my favorites. I love you, and please come see me in Pittsburgh one day. Yeah.
I'm gonna do it. I'm gonna do it. We're gonna find a fun place to go. We're gonna go to Primanti Brothers. We'll do it.
Oh, dude, I'll take you for sure. Keep me posted. Peace and love, Alex. It was great talking to you, man. Thank you so much.
Thank you.